Okay, I think this is part 6, and it's the last video for volume 27. Volume 28, the newest one that has come out, is going to be our next one, so be ready, everybody. The Lanzanov Envoys. These documents will require your authorization, Lady Detlinde. I rolled my eyes at the scholar who had just entered with even more paperwork to add to the ever-growing stack. Life had been painfully boring since my return from the Archduke Conference. I did as required and continued to sign one document after another with my mana pen. Why isn't she reading what they're having her sign? They could be having her sign away essentially her life, and she wouldn't even notice. But the situation made no sense to me. I was no mere future Ob. I was the country's next Zent. Why? How dare they waste my time with such trifles? One cannot blame me for my impatience. Once I obtained the Gruterscheid, I would have at last be freed from this busy work. My escape would have come sooner if not for those interfering royals. Because of my current status, visiting the sovereignty was no easy feat. The Archduke Conference had come as a shining opportunity, but the royal family had gotten in my way at every turn. It was truly infuriating. I would have learned so much if they had let me investigate the underground archive. The king's incredibly rude third wife had scoffed at me and suggested that I first study the ancient language. But I mean, hello, many of these documents are in ancient languages. So of course they would have her study it. Hello? How are you going to know what you're looking for if you can't even read the dang stuff? Just thinking back to our exchange filled me with displeasure, which grew even further when I remembered that asinine order from Trarkol. He wanted me to give Lord Ferdinand a hidden room of all things. And it needs to be done by the funeral since he plans to check whether the royal decree was followed. The nerve! That incompetent king must have lost his mind. Does he not know that giving an unmarried man his own hidden room is the height of impropriety? Impropriety? Unless I obtain the Gruterscheid and stake my claim to the throne soon, Trarkol will surely bring Jürgen Schmidt to ruin. No, that would be you who would bring it to ruin. It was unbelievable. The future of our country really did rest on my shoulders. Yeah, right. I recalled the sovereign priest pleased for me to become a proper Zent, then sighed and said, how troublesome. In truth, I was not troubled in the least. They were right to place their faith in me. Ah. I met the gaze of the scholar who was waiting for me to finish signing the papers. My contemplating had stilled my hand. If only the Gruterscheid were already mine. A mere scholar would never dare to pressure his Zent. But alas, I did not yet have the Gruterscheid, so I resumed signing. Goosebumps suddenly covered my arms, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was the same sensation as having a cold, but I was in perfect health, and there was nary a chill in this warm summer's day. 2 words flashed in my mind: border gate. Someone was trying to enter the duchy without the Ob's permission. It was a feeling exclusive to archducal family members dedicating their mana to the Foundation. My father's death meant we were currently without an Ob, so we could not close any border gates on our side. There was only one gate in Erensbach where such an intrusion would not allure our guards, the one connected to the country gate out at sea. I am returning to my chambers, I said, setting down my mana pen and rising to my feet. Martina, prepare my riding clothes and veil, and gather my retainers. I must check on the border gate. The scholar was astounded that I would abandon my signing work, so I shot him a scathing look. You are in my way. Did you not hear me say I must check the border gate? Our guests must be envoys from Lanzanov. Only then did the scholar grasp the importance of my leaving. He quickly sorted the documents separating the signed and unsigned ones, then hurried out of the room with them to report to Lord Ferdinand, no doubt. The scholars discussed everything with Lord Ferdinand, and I trust him with so much administrative work. That is why nobody could refuse the royal family's bizarre decree. How bizarre. Or how pathetic, sorry. I don't know why I said bizarre. I spent the whole journey back to my chambers, mentally berating the incompetent scholars, who were much too dependent on my fiancé. Then I put on the riding clothes my attendants rushed to bring me, and a veil to shield me from the sun. I sighed. How envious I am that men can ride their high beasts without first needing to change. Thanks to that frustrating disparity and the scholar's need to share every little detail with Lord Ferdinand, he would arrive at the border gate before me. I sped onto the balcony and took flight, hoping to arrive before I lost all control of the situation. The glimmering blue ocean stretched out before me. In the distance, I could just barely see a tiny black dot attempting to enter the gate. I made my way over at once. And of course, Lord Ferdinand and the Knights Order were already there when I arrived. Lady Detlinde, is that ship definitely from Lanzanov? Lord Ferdinand asked. I do not recognize its style. Because he was from Ehrenfest, he had never seen a Lanzanov ship before. Knowing that he, a man who had gathered more support from the scholars than I, and who dared to act as though he were our duchy's next Ob, needed my help, made me feel somewhat superior. I want to smack this girl so much. Indeed, I said, Lanzanov has been using that design since last year. I am told it moves rather quickly. Lanzanov's new ship was black and elongated. In a sense, it was like a massive fish. I continued, during last year's welcoming feast, an envoy told me the ships are designed to carry as much luggage as possible while still being thin enough to use the border gate. Ah, behold, they will change in a most unusual way after passing through. I pointed and the ship that had just passed through the gate stopped on its way to the port. Tiles on its surface began to turn, changing it from black to silver. And what purpose does that serve? Lord Ferdinand asked. I do not know, but Lanzanov envoys consider it necessary before staying here. Personally, I would rather their ships remain black, that silver is terrifyingly bright. Yeah, especially when the sun hits it, I imagine. Trade with Lanzanov was essential to Arensbach's economy, especially because we had the only open country gate in Jürgenschmidt. Entrusting the matter to Lord Ferdinand, who knew nothing of our culture or theirs, would put our entire duchy at risk. That was why I intended to take full control. The boat will dock at the port, I said. Then the envoys will come to the castle and request an audience. We shall grant it and prepare for them a welcoming feast as we wait for the boat to arrive. As we have confirmed the intruders as guests from Lanzanov, we may return to the castle. You can go ahead of me. I did not know that gate was unmanned. One might consider it an invitation for Lanzanov to invade, so I shall command the knight's order to station guards there from now on. What is he saying? That makes no sense at all. That gate is used solely by Lanzanov envoys, as it is surrounded only by the ocean, and our guests have already arrived. I do not see why we should treat them with suspicion. It will be a waste to assign knights to the border gate. Did Lord Ferdinand not understand something that simple? Continue sending trade ships? Then we will need to keep them under watch, he said. Commander, assign guards to the border gate at once. Yes, my lord, the commander replied. How many would you advise? Lord Ferdinand was completely ignoring my advice, even though I went out of my way to educate him. And the commander, rather than seeking my opinion, was already discussing the details of his assignment. It was unbelievable that they would both disregard me. Fine, I exclaimed, vying for their attention. I shall return to the castle then. Whatever. Lord Ferdinand did not even turn around as he said, Lady Detlinde, since you seem to know when the welcoming feast will take place, I would ask you to oversee the necessary arrangements. Then, without another word, he flew to the border gate with his retainers and the knight commander. Look at this, they think insultingly little of my talents. What talents? Infuriated that my own fiancé would treat me so awfully. Dude, he's not even treating you badly. You should see how he treated Wilfried. Yeah, that's not good. That's nothing. I returned to my chambers with my retainers. The moment we got back, they began making arrangements for the welcoming feast. Halt, I said. Just whose orders are you following? You serve me, do you not? My retainers stared at me in surprise and exchanged troubled glances. A long pause passed before Martina stepped forward. We are not doing this for Lord Ferdinand, my lady. If we do not give the envoys a proper welcome, Lanzanov might assume you are unsuited to become our next ob. Indeed, Martina is correct, another of my retainers said. These are envoys coming. We would have started getting ready for the feast no matter what Lord Ferdinand ordered. We would not want to besmirch your good name by letting things go unprepared. Please allow us to proceed. They were correct, and their revelations cheered me up. Very well, I said, waving them away. Leave the bare minimum here and go do your work. My retainers resumed their duties. Meanwhile, Martina came to me with a letter. Lady Detlinde, it would seem that Lady Georgine wishes to speak with you. Mother does? It must be about that again. Please excuse me. Though I was recognized as the next ob, or the next zent to the truly insignificant, I had not yet settled into either position. This meant I could neither lord over my mother nor refuse her invitations, no matter my displeasure. Having no other choice, I agreed to meet with her. The required preparations had already been made, so she arrived in my room in no time at all. We exchanged greetings, and she handed me a sound-blocking magic tool. Her next words came as no surprise. Detlinde, has Lord Ferdinand received a hidden room yet? If everything is not ready in time for the funeral, both you and Arensbach as a whole will receive a lambasting from the royal family. I understand that, but granting someone a hidden room before they are wed? It is unthinkable, mother, cruel even. Fiancés are not normally afforded such a luxury. As hidden rooms could not be made in guest accommodations, we would need to invite Lord Ferdinand to proper chambers to carry out this unreasonable request. A man who has yet to become my husband would suddenly be able to enter my bed whenever he pleased. It was improper. I mean, dude. Just have him be in a separate room. You guys have plenty of rooms, right? Have him be in a separate room until you guys are married, and then get rid of the hidden room and that one, and, well, yeah. Once I obtained the Gruterscheid and took my rightful place as Zent, I would cancel my engagement to Lord Ferdinand in a heartbeat. I did not want to marry him, and to make matters worse, he had once been sent to the temple. He could not be trusted. Worse still, if what happened so often in the temple were to happen here, the public would be blaming me for giving Lord Ferdinand his own chambers in the first place, even though the royals had ordered it. That may be so, but if Lord Ferdinand is not given a hidden room, he will need to return to Ehrenfest until your wedding. We cannot allow that to happen, not with Arensbach in its current state. My mother's dark green eyes betrayed not even a trace of emotion, even though her own daughter was about to have her life ruined by a royal decree. I had thought she might show at least some concern for my chastity, or express her outrage at the royals for their unreasonable demands. But that flicker of hope quickly died out, as it always did when I expected something of her. I was so embarrassed that I couldn't even meet her gaze. But when I am the Zent, maybe then Mother would give me the attention I needed. Upon learning that I was a Zent candidate, she had asked me whether I wished to pursue the throne, and told me to do everything I could to secure my dream. That was the first time she had ever encouraged me. Get on with it, she said. Lanzanov's envoys are here, and there is not much time before the funeral. If only King Trolko had ordered the low-ranking Ehrenfest to be silent instead of making such unreasonable demands of us, I struggled to understand why Ahrensbach, which placed so much higher in the rankings, were having to meet the needs of an inferior duchy. Ehrenfest must have made a powerful move, my mother ventured. Still, no matter how unreasonable this royal decree might seem, we must comply. Anything else will incite the Obs of other duchies to scold us. I pursed my lips. A mere scolding sounded much better than giving Lord Ferdinand a room. At the very least, it would not threaten my This is what I'm saying, dude! Go and have him be in a different room. Hello, it could be on the other side of the side of the building for all you care. Hello? Dude. Besides, do you really think Lord Ferdinand is going to even do anything? The guy's been chased for, I don't know how old is he at this point? 27, I think? I don't know. I don't remember. But yeah, he's in his 20s. He has not even tried anything on you, dude. I think he'd be good. Mother gave me a look of exasperation as if she had read my mind. Detlende, the royal decree was only to give him a hidden room. They did not stipulate its location. Simply move him to the western building. That's what I'm saying. Hello? All you have to do is just put him in a different building. You don't have to put him in the same building as you. The western building contained rooms for the duchy's second and third wives. It had never occurred to me that I could put him there, since he had come to Ahrensbach to marry a female Ob, but it really was a genius idea. We could demonstrate that he was still only my fiancé while complying with the royal decree and preventing anything lewd from happening. Joy spread through my heart. Mother was thinking about me after all. If you had such a brilliant idea up your sleeve, you could have told me sooner, I said with a pout. I would not have waited so long to give him a hidden room. Mother's red lips curled into a smile. Now was simply most convenient for me. That look in her eyes proved that she had not been thinking about my needs at all. Yep, she has been scheming. As always, but I did not get my hopes up this time. From there, Mother declared that we had nothing more to discuss and promptly departed. As I watched her go, I could not help but heave a defeated sigh. During dinner, I informed Lord Ferdinand that he would be granted a room in the western building. The news took his retainers by surprise, and they questioned me with looks of concern. But we are busy with preparations for the funeral and are meeting with Lanzanov envoys. We do not have time to relocate from the main building. I cared not for their circumstances. The blame lies not with me, I said. Ehrenfest requested this hidden room, and the Zent ordered us to provide it. If you take issue, then direct your protest to King Trollcall. My only role in this whole idea was to give Lord Ferdinand a hidden room in time for the funeral. Everything else was his problem. I shall move before the summer funeral, Lord Ferdinand announced, and gave me the kind smile I was so used to seeing. You have my immense gratitude for this display of generosity. He truly is beautiful. If only his birth and time in the temple had not ruined him. How unfortunate. Shut up. I want to smack her. Smack her so much. Lanzanov's envoys had settled into their temporary accommodations. Requests for meetings were flying around, and the welcoming feast was on the horizon. In other words, the castle was even busier than usual. On the day of the feast, I started getting ready in the early afternoon. I ate a light lunch, cleansed, and got changed, which took me quite a while. Today I was wearing a thin layer of white with a high collar that covered everything except my face. Beneath a blue covering adorned with gorgeous embroidery, the undergarment was covered in magic circles that relieved me from the heat to at least some degree. I would not have been able to wear anything over it otherwise. Your blonde hair is so gorgeous, one of my attendants crooned while tying it up for me. I almost wish you had never come of age. I covered my face with a thin lace veil. The material did not matter and was often chosen based on personal preference, but wearing one was absolutely necessary for any decent Ahrensbach woman in a formal setting. Once prepared, I went to the hall with my retainers, feeling a combination of tension and elation. I had been underage last year, so my time at the feast had ended with the exchange of greetings. This was going to be my first time attending this entire thing. The welcoming feast was held annually and on a small scale. Then a second larger feast was held when the Duchy's Geeves gathered for the rousing summer Starbine ceremony. This gave them an opportunity to socialize with the Lanzanov envoys. Lady Detlende has arrived, one of the knights said as I entered the hall. Lord Ferdinand was already in attendance with his retainers, as were the other members of Ahrensbach's leadership with theirs. Waiting beside Lord Ferdinand were young Letizia and her retainers. Last year we had both been sent away together, but now she would need to leave alone. I naturally felt superior as I gazed down at her. Oh, shut up. The women in attendance were all wearing veils, while the men were wrapped in large thin layers of cloth over their high-collared white outfits. Everyone was wearing summer colors in the Arensbach style, except Lord Ferdinand, who wore the colors representing Ehrenfest. It was presumably to indicate that he had yet to marry into our duchy, but it made him look entirely as though he were the ruler of the hall. "Oh my," I said, "I see you're not wearing summer colors, Lord Ferdinand. I did consider it, but I elected to wear Ehrenfest colors instead," he replied with a peaceful smile. "I wish to make it clear that while I might give my opinion, I do not have the authority to make decisions here." I gave an understanding nod. One would normally wish to dress in the superior colors of Arensbach, so his decision was nothing if not humble. There was no two ways about it, surely. "Lanzanov, enter," said the attendants by the entrance. The doors opened wide, and in came Lanzanov's envoys, approaching in rows. Like the rest of us, they were dressed in clothes of the Arensbach style. The climate of their home country was said to be nothing like ours, so they were unable to wear their usual attire during their visits. However, they were not wearing summer colors either. Instead, they were clad in silver clothes I did not recognize, perhaps to indicate their status as Lanzanov's envoys. 12 envoys in total entered the hall. 6 looked the same as we did, while the others had more distinct features and skin not the same color as our own. I was used to seeing them each year, but it still shocked me that such slight changes in appearance could make one stand out so much. One of the envoys stepped ahead of his peers, a man perhaps 2 or 3 years my senior. As he crossed his arms and knelt, his young and quite frankly beautiful appearance caught my attention. I did not recognize him, which meant he had not been here last year. The man's hair, which was somewhat between golden and chestnut brown, was secured behind his head with a hair clip in a style that had been popular here in Arensbach until my grandmother's generation. Even now, one can find older men wearing it. "People of Arensbach, it is a pleasure to meet you all," he said. "I am Leonzio, grandson of Lanzanov's king, Chiafrido. Before the others are introduced, may I pray for this blessing in appreciation of the serendipitous meeting ordained by the pure rivers flowing from Flutrain, the goddess of water." "You may," I answered, blinking in surprise. I certainly had not expected a Lanzanov envoy to give a noble greeting. Leonzio also wore a face stone ring on his left middle finger, as Jurgen-Smith nobles did. He looked upward, and a blessing fluttered out of its omni-elemental stone, which reflected his status as a royal. "Oh?" For a fleeting moment after seeing Lord Ferdinand for the first time, Lord Leonzio was the picture of shock. He quickly hid the expression hidden behind a smile, but there was no denying it. For some reason, he was in complete disbelief. I gave Lord Ferdinand a quick glance to see his reaction, but I saw nothing. Of course he's going to hide it. Next, Lord Leonzio began introducing his fellow envoys, acting as though he had never been shocked for a moment. Most of them had come last year, the only exceptions being him and his retainers. Once they had finished, it was our archducal family's turn to speak. The death of my late father, the previous Ab, was announced, and I was introduced as his successor with Ferdinand as my fiancé. Mother and Letizia were introduced as well. The formalities soon gave way to more casual conversation. Letizia departed with her retainers, leaving only the adults in the hall. The scholars in charge of trade and those who sought political intelligence approached the envoys with wine-filled glasses, launching into one topic after another. It was the preliminary battle before the upcoming meetings. "Lord Ferdinand, do you not wish to join them?" I asked. He replied with a gentle smile, "Because of my duties, I am so rarely able to be with you. I would appreciate the chance for us to spend time together." Pleased, I nodded. It was true that we had seldom seen each other as of late. I had assumed that Lord Ferdinand was rudely avoiding me, but he was simply busy. Of course that was the reason. A man from a lower-ranking duchy would never look down on me. He is. He hates you. A lot. I sipped a drink Martina had given me in a much better mood. "Lady Detlinde, as you are the next Ob, there is something we must discuss," Lord Leonzio began. He then asked me when the next Lanzanov princess will be accepted. I would normally wait until the relevant meetings, but I wish to inform my country as soon as I can. They would send correspondence via the trade ships passing between our two territories. Looking him in his amber eyes, I smiled and said, "We cannot accept a Lanzanov princess. Please send word to Lanzanov as soon as you can. It would not do for them to prepare for nothing." "What? Hold on a moment. For what reason would our princess not be accepted?" "King Trollcall decreed it. I am unsure what else to say. I mean, she doesn't have the details, so of course she's not going to be able to tell you. And even if she did, I don't know if she would tell you." I recounted as much as I could remember from the recent Archduke conference, while Lord Ferdinand supplemented my explanation from beside me. That seemed to make Lord Leonzio realize our refusal was neither a joke nor a deception. He stood in a daze for a moment, then suddenly extended a hand to me. Lord Ferdinand smacked it away at once. "Why?" "Contain yourself," he said, his voice quiet but intense. If you grow too emotional, I will need to summon the guards." Lord Leonzio swallowed whatever he had wanted to say, then turned to Lord Ferdinand with a slight, peaceful grin. "Does the King of Jurgen-Smith mean to bring Lanzanov to ruin? If not, I would ask that our princess be accepted." I cocked my head. How would our refusal of the princess bring Lanzanov to ruin? That's what I want to know. I wanted to ask, but Lord Ferdinand put an end to the topic with a cold smile. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can say or do about a decision made by the Zent. Yeah, he's not, wrong on that. We can't overturn the decree. He was so curt that I started to feel sorry for Lord Leonzio. Lord Ferdinand, there's no need to be so cold. We should ask for more information about Lanzanov's circumstances and pass it along to the Zent. Perhaps he will change his mind. Lord Leonzio appeared to have relaxed somewhat, but Lord Ferdinand was unamused. He gave our guest an unwelcoming stare and said, I do not expect the Zent to go back on his decree. He hasn't gone back on the ones he did before. Perhaps he should wait for a new Zent to be crowned and ask them their opinion. His refusal to show even a touch of warmth made me rather cross. Arensbach had the only open country gate in Jurgensmith, and our trade with Lanzanov was crucial to our country's economy. We needed them as much as they needed us. So why would the Zent not be more considerate of their circumstances? This is why country bumpkins who know nothing of Arensbach or Lanzanov are so troublesome. I turned my head away from Lord Ferdinand with a sharp pout, then directed a kind smile at Lord Leonzio. It was true that Arensbach had very little chance of changing the Zent's mind, but if we listened to Lanzanov's plight and made an honest request, maybe we would succeed. Either you would or you won't. Either way, the king has the final decision on this one. He had accepted an abnormal request from Ehrenfest, so why not one from us? As luck would have it, Lord Leonzio, the royal family will be visiting Arensbach this summer for the late Op's funeral. Perhaps you could ask the Zent then? Lady Detlinde, what are you saying? Lord Ferdinand asked, looking shocked. For security reasons, I cannot permit anyone from Lanzanov to be allowed near the royal family. His surprise made no sense to me. Your permission is not necessary. The royal family will decide whether to allow the meeting. Arensbach cannot allow the destruction of such a valuable trade partner, so I wish to hear what Lord Leonzio has to say. There is no need. I was beginning to lose my temper. Once again, Lord Ferdinand was disregarding my opinion without making even the slightest attempt to understand it. I would need to put him back in his place. I am agreeing to hear him out. Do not interfere. My retainers will remain by my side, so there is no cause for concern. You might think of me as your Geduld, Lord Ferdinand, but the jealousy of Eberglebe is unsightly. Lord Ferdinand paused, his light golden eyes wide with surprise. My accusation was correct after all. No, he's not jealous. He's concerned. He's concerned about letting anybody from Lanzanov near the royal family, considering what had happened before in the last, the introductory tournament where the dang royals were attacked. So, of course he's going to be concerned about that. To think he would allow such an emotion to get the better of him. What a troublesome man. As punishment, I declared that I did not need Eberglebe's company and that I would take Lord Leonzio and my retinue to a separate room for our discussion. One of Lord Ferdinand's retainers asked to join us to ensure that nothing inappropriate happened, and out of magnanimity alone, I allowed it. I wonder who it was. I'm guessing it was Justice. I gathered a group of 15 people to a meeting room by the hall. Then, after offering Lord Leonzio a seat, I said, "What do you mean when you said that Lanzanov might be brought to ruin?" He paused in thought, then replied, "How much do you know about the circumstances surrounding Lanzanov's founding? Your country is an important trade partner for Arensbach, but we are taught nothing about your history, not even at the Royal Academy. I knew about the goods we imported from Lanzanov, and that was all. I took no interest in its past. My retainers struggled to mask their grimaces, but it was the truth. This story is not shared in Jurgensmith, then." Lord Leonzio went on to narrate Lanzanov's past. His tale began almost 400 years ago, during the reign of our own king, Oswald. The name had come up during history lessons, but I remembered next to nothing about it. Still, I politely nodded along as though I understood. As your king Oswald grew old, and it came time to choose his next Zent, there were 3 candidates who had obtained Gruteschites. "Oh my, 3 with Gruteschites?" I asked, trying to swallow my shock. I had always assumed there was only 1 in Jurgensmith, and that whoever obtained it would automatically become the Zent. The Gruteshite can be duplicated with 1 staff, no? There is nothing unusual about there being several. He spoke as though it were the most obvious thing in the world, so I responded with a quick, true. I could not let anyone know that a foreigner knew more about Jurgensmith than I did. As you know, King Oswald chose King Hyland as his successor. That name also rings a bell. What did he do again? I continued to smile and nod as I racked my brain, but nothing came to mind. We had barely touched upon King Hyland in class, since he had accomplished very little of note. Lord Leonzio continued, "One of the 3 candidates..." Dang it, how am I going to say this? Tokenheit could not accept that he was passed over. He left Jurgensmith with his magic tools and face stones in search of a new land. Tokenheit had sailed through the country gate with his wife and retainers and ended up in Lanzanov, a nation of people who were incapable of using magic. Wow, okay. The land was impoverished but able to support life, which had been good enough for his purposes. He had used its Gruteschites to create a foundation and cast into a kiln to make his very own ivory city. The people were in awe of Tokenheit, who had arrived suddenly by sea and created an entire city in an instant. They began to worship him as someone from the country of the gods, And that was how I became king of Lanzanov. It was true even in Jurgensmith that those who obtained a Gruterscheid were worshipped as gods. I would have received the same respect once I got one of my own. You're not going to get one. For a moment I imagined everyone's looks of admiration and reveled in the pleasure. It was essential that I obtain the Gruterscheid post-haste. However, despite being worshipped as a god, Tolkenheit faced a serious problem. Neither he nor his retinue were able to have children with the people of Lanzanov, who did not have any mana. To make matters worse, his Gruterscheid was merely a copy made with his staff. It would naturally be lost upon his death. Oh my, is that how Jurgensmith lost his Gruterscheid? Possibly. That is a possibility, to be completely honest. With this new information, I could guess why the Civil War had started. The Gruterscheid must have disappeared after the second prince, due to become the Zent, was murdered. The first and third princes who had fought to secure it must not have known it was merely a duplicate, and now even the location of the original was unknown. I wonder where one goes to make copies. That's a good question. Assuming that Lord Leonzio was correct, I would need to find the Gruterscheid before I could make one of my own. Surely that was feasible for someone who had activated the Zent selecting magic circle. Barely. The city could at least be maintained by those registered with the foundational magic, Lord Leonzo continued, but that required a step. Unless action was taken, it would all one day collapse. As a future Ob, you understand this, correct? Yes, of course. It was taught at the Royal Academy that one needed a staff to obtain foundational magic. Most of my class had considered it unnecessary lesson since back then students had all obtained their staff in their first year. But it was a matter of grave importance for those who had magically constructed cities outside the country. The buildings would all collapse without staff-wielding individuals who could inherit their foundation. Only royals and their retainers had gone to Lanzanov, so the children they bore had plenty of mana. They also received the same education their parents had received in the Royal Academy since the lessons were passed down to them. However, they could not obtain staffs anywhere but Jurgensmith. Tolkenheit petitioned the Zent to give one to his son, as there was no other way for the boy to inherit the foundational magic. However, the request was refused. The Zent at the time was not being stubborn or malicious. Those not registered as Jurgensmith nobles were physically unable to acquire a staff. Okay, that makes sense. Thus, a tradition was born of sending Lanzanov princesses to Jurgensmith. Their children will be registered as nobles, obtain their staffs, and then return to Lanzanov to become its new king. Okay, so that explains why only one is able to survive while the others are all killed off. The reigning Zent was concerned that Lanzanov might grow too powerful, however, so he made a contract stating that in each generation only a single individual will return, either male or female. Tolkenheit had agonized over this. On the one hand, he wanted to preserve the Lanzanov royal family's abundance of mana, and a baby's mana was mostly dependent on its mother, so it was better to have a girl return from Jurgensmith. On the other, pregnancy would render their staff-wielding queen unable to use magic, which would effectively cripple the country. Lanzanov had plenty of mana-rich women among the retainers, their families, and their daughters, and asking for a boy to be sent back would make it easier to produce more children. So for each generation, that was what Tolkenheit decided to do. Thus, a promise between our countries was made. Jurgensmith would accept a princess, give her son a staff, then he came of age, then return him to Lanzanov a king. Lord Leonzio's expression contorted. Yet now Jurgensmith refuses to uphold our agreement. One could not blame him for being upset. Lanzanov was only sending out us its princesses to prevent its collapse, but now we were turning them away. Even my heart began to ache. At the same time, I was furious that King Trollcall would cast aside such an ancient promise. I wonder why he did that. His streak of cruel and nonsensical decisions made me want to drag him from his throne as quickly as I could. Trade from Jurgensmith plummeted out of the blue 10 years ago after a shipment of face stones, and now our princess is being refused. What are we to do? He squeezed his hands into tight fists, and it was then that I made my resolve. Fear not, I will explain your circumstances to Lord Ferdinand and petition King Trollcall in your stead. I am a Zent candidate, you know. Lord Leonzio stared at me, his amber eyes filled with not only shock, but also hope and admiration. A Zent candidate? It was a satisfying reaction, to say the least, and I gave him the kind of smile I can muster. The next day, I promptly summoned Lord Ferdinand to a meeting. We sat across from each other at a table, then I explained the matter at hand. Lanzanov was sending its princesses to Jurgensmith as part of an ancient promise it had made to prevent its collapse. I also made sure to express how cruel the Zent was for turning his back on such a long-standing agreement. I must ask you to explain this to King Trollcall and get him to reconsider his stance, I announced with a smile. Please have a plan ready in time for the funeral. It was his job to face and negotiate with the royal family. I had thought that Lord Ferdinand would sympathize with Lanzanov once he knew its circumstances. No, he's not. But he was not moving the least. Yep, considering what he is. He's one of those kids. Resting his elbow on the table and his head on his hand, he watched me closely and said, Is that it? What do you mean? Precisely what I said. You have focused only on what is most convenient for Lanzanov and introduced no new information of worth. I detect nothing that would change the Zent's mind. Excuse me? Lanzanov is in danger of collapse. Do you not understand the severity of not having a Zent or an Ob to inherit your foundation? I could not believe my ears. Had he not listened to a word of my appeal? Perhaps he was simply too thick to understand it. I shot him a furious glare, but even then he gave me a calm smile and continued to oppose me. Claims that Lanzanov will collapse are greatly exaggerated. Its people lived perfectly acceptable lives before Tolkienheit showed up. That is true. They did survive. If anywhere is at risk of complete destruction, it is Jurgensmit. Our entire country was made with mana, meaning we could very well be reduced to a desert of white sand. The only thing at risk of crumbling away in Lanzanov is the city that Tolkienheit built. He's not wrong. Like I said, they did survive before he even showed up, so they could still survive. It would take some time, but they would be able to do it. He continued, Lanzanov might be in dire straits without a staff-wielding male, but that has no bearing on Jurgensmit. We gain next to nothing from accepting more princesses. Even if their entire country were to collapse, as they say, we would simply close our country gate and have it open elsewhere. We do not need to trade with Lanzanov in particular. I glared even more intensely, but we do not have the Grucheshite right now. True, but it will not be long before that changes, I suspect. Indeed, I am stopping at nothing in my search, but it might be some time yet before I succeed. It was the perfect opportunity for Lord Ferdinand to vow to support me, but he merely blinked and said, perhaps. He was always so slow to react at times like this. I mean, he's hiding how he is. I sincerely believe that he knew nothing about the fair hearts of women. Well, he probably doesn't. You say that Jurgensmit has nothing to gain, I protested, but with our royal family being so small, would we not benefit greatly from a Lanzanov princess? You do realize that all the kids that are born of the Lanzanov princess that are not sent back are killed. I was so very proud of my argument, but Lord Ferdinand shook his head. During our current crisis, we cannot risk a foreigner obtaining the Grucheshite. You are right that a man or rich princess would benefit the royal family in some regards. But it would also invite chaos as far as the line of succession is concerned. That is why the princess has been refused, I expect. At the very least, Jurgensmit cannot accept one until a true Zent has taken the throne. In short, the royals were scared that Lanzanov might seize control of our country in its weakened state. The way Lord Ferdinand propounded such theories and refused to even question the Zent made me sick to my stomach. You make a convincing argument, Lord Ferdinand, but it is the truth not that you are afraid of standing up to the Zent. Our visitors from Lanzanov simply fear losing the power that has made people worship them as gods. I see no reason why the Zent should endanger a Jurgensmit for their sake. Plus, what kind of an impact will our decision to oppose the Zent and stand with foreigners have on Arensbach? Lanzanov's royal family might lose their foothold, but the country as a whole will not collapse. The loss of their capital city will doubtless cause some cultural setbacks, but judging by the unusually shaped vessel they arrived on, they have made technological advances unlike anything seen in Jurgensmit. Lord Ferdinand continued to say everything except what I wanted to hear. He claimed this was a good opportunity to weaken Lanzanov while Jurgensmit was unstable, that we needed to die our foundation at once so that we could close the border gate, and so on. I cannot believe he is acting so cold, even now when I am being so open about my conversation with Lord Leonzio, that he would watch Lanzanov fall to ruin simply because I forbade him from joining us is any man more like Abeglig than he. Lord Ferdinand, I said firmly, I do not want Lord Leonzio or his family to suffer. You must understand that. You do not want them to suffer, but you would have us take a Lanzanov princess. I doubt the envoy said much about what happens to those women, but those who enter the villa are... Whatever happens to them, Lanzanov clearly has no issue with it. If the king desires it and the princesses come knowing their fate, then who are we to interfere? Do you mean to say that the princesses who come to Jurgensmit deserve their fate and should accept what happens to them? He was looking straight at me, his golden eyes betraying a painful intensity that told me he was fighting back a storm of emotions. Was it really so excruciating to him that I would support another man over the princesses? In any case, I refused to back down. I gave a firm nod and said, yes, princesses who take issue with their treatment should tell their family and negotiate with the Zent for things to be improved. Their frustrations are nothing when their entire country is at stake. Lord Ferdinand did not respond, but I could tell from how his smile broadened that he finally understood. Do make all this clear to the royal family when they arrive for the funeral. Lanzanov's so-called collapse is nothing compared to the chaos that accepting their princess will wreak on Jurgensmit. I side with the Zent. He had refused me. For a moment my mind went blank, then my anger grew so fierce that I could no longer contain it. What is the meaning of this? I came to Arensbach by royal decree and stand in no position to support Lanzanov over the king. If you desire change, we will need to wait until the next Zent arises. No matter how much I shouted, his expression did not change. He would not speak a word against the royal family while the current Zent held the throne. I do not care to know how anyone as cold and ignorant as you, I cried at last. To think I must be engaged in such a brute. Leave at once. I do not wish to see your face. As you wish. Lord Ferdinand replied with a thin smile, then stood up and did exactly as instructed. My outrage was clearly apparent, yet he showed not even the slightest hint of remorse. That is the man I have expected to... Dude, do you not realize he hates you? They expect he wants to get away from you. I spent the rest of my day complaining non-stop about the callous Lord Ferdinand. How was I going to break the news to Lord Leonzio? I could not bear the thought of disappointing someone who relied on me. But I sent word to the building where the Lanzanov envoys were staying. Lord Ferdinand is positively heartless. I never knew he was so cruel, I declared upon visiting what was known as the Lanzanov estate. I apologized for having failed to convince him, then promised to do everything I could to grant them a meeting with the royal family. Oh, God. I see you are not just beautiful, but kind as well, Lord Leonzio said, his amber eyes gazing into mine. If only we had met sooner. God dang it. Take her away! Take her away with you! Take her with you! I don't care! Take that Lindy with you! I do not care! We would love to get rid of her! My cheeks became flushed. Jurgen Schmidt tended to favor delicate euphemisms, so I was not used to being complimented so directly. It certainly did not help that Lord Leonzio was so enticingly handsome. My heart pounded in my chest. I started to sense Blancfuz's presence. Then I sat up with a start. I cannot dance on the palms of the goddesses. I was a Zent candidate, destined to take the throne or at least become the next Ob Ahrensbach. I could not fall in love with Lord Leonzio when I was already engaged. Although I do appreciate your feelings, Lord Leonzio, as a Zent candidate, I cannot reciprocate them. Do you already have your Grutterscheid, Lady Ditlinde? I cast my eyes down, then shook my head. I am still searching, and if you would keep this between us... I paused to give Lord Leonzio a sound-blocking magic tool. It was bad enough to openly discuss the Grutterscheid, let alone criticize the royal family. If we were to continue this conversation, it would need to be private. In truth, I said, Jurgen Schmidt's current Zent does not have the Grutterscheid, and the royal family is restricting information so that nobody else can search for it. I would be able to obtain it if they would just stop obstructing me. I cannot believe what I am hearing. This is unforgivable. Lord Leonzio said he was getting mad for my sake. I had a concern for my future as a Zent candidate. His passion swept over me, soothing the wounds left by my fiancé, and gracing me with visions of... Dang it, Efloralum, the goddess of flowers. Oh, God. I hate this so much. Oh, Lord Leonzio, I giggled. How kind you are. Feeling angry for my sake. Lord Ferdinand shows me no such consideration. He only sees with jealousy. Lord Leonzio paused, seemingly debating with himself. Then he asked one simple question. Do you love your current fiancé? It was a royal decree that bound me to Lord Ferdinand. I was unable to refuse. He is clearly in love with me, but after seeing him act so cold, I doubted that I would ever be able to love him back. Only now was it clear to me why Geduld sought to flee from Aviglave's ceaseless jealousy. He is someone whom I cannot escape from, I concluded. Lord Leonzio, I must ask you to keep this a secret. And if you could escape him, would you take my hand instead? What are you saying? I do not have the staff of a Zent candidate, so I cannot take the throne, but I do know the location of the Grutterscheid. I can support you in your decision to become queen. You know it. Yeah, right. Come again, I said, swallowing hard. Before me was someone who knew where to find what I was seeking and wanted to help me obtain it. What was this if not Dragoner's guidance? If you accept me as your partner, he said, I shall tell you where to look. My heart raced at the thought of marrying this irresistibly sweet man. He was close to my age, and better still, not married by the reputation of the temple. Or not marred by the reputation of the temple. The fact he was raised in another country would create challenges, but he seemed to have received practically the same education as our nobles. Plus, being the grandson of Lanzanov's king, he was surely rich with the royal blood of Jurgen Schmidt. From where we were seated, I could even faintly sense his mana. There was a slight gap between us, but not enough to pose any problems. But my engagement is the result of a royal decree, I muttered. If you become the Zent, the decrees of a false king will cease to hold meaning. A sweet scent fluttered from Lord Leonzio to me. I suddenly leaned closer to him, wanting to inhale it more deeply. Your fiancé has done nothing to help you or the country, so he has actively spurned your attempts to explain our circumstances. A gentle smile arose on his lips. He must be soulless to have refused the heartfelt request of a woman so lovely. I don't know what to think about this. Dude, if you have to deal with her, I feel so bad for you. Lord Leonzio was merely repeating my earlier criticisms, but hearing that from him, I could not shake the feeling that the world agreed with me. Lord Ferdinand truly was a heartless fiancé. There is no need for you to be stuck with someone so cruel, he continued. His kind words reminded me that I already intended to cancel my current engagement upon taking the throne. Lord Ferdinand greatly resembles my uncle. He must have Lanzanov blood coursing through his veins, and if you are already engaged to such a man, what problem would there be with me taking his place? Greatly resembles my uncle. Who's his uncle? That's what I want to know. Who's his uncle? You have a point. It can wait until you take the throne, but... Oh, God. Georgina, is this part of your plan, too? Seriously, is this part of your plan? If so, I agree. Take her away. Get her out of here.
Let's go.
Be wed. His amber eyes, so assuring and sweet, made me want to melt. Take my hand, Lady Detlande. I wish to make you the next Zent. Yeah, ain't happening on that one. My retainers could not tell what we were discussing because of the sound-blocking magic tool, but their expressions changed when Lord Leonzio extended a hand to me. No, Lady Detlande, Martina exclaimed. Do not interfere, I said, brushing aside her attempt to stop me, as I stood up and approached the charming man sitting across from me. My mind was fuzzy, almost as though I were in a dream, but I was fully convinced letting this opportunity slip through my fingers would make my search for the Gucci so much harder. This is Dragoner's guidance. Lord Leonzio is my true soulmate to whom, dang it, Lebesque wishes to bind me. So my heart overflowing with confidence, I placed my hand in his. Oh, God. Oh, boy. I wonder if that's going to come back and bite her in the butt. My hopes and their problems. The ordinance that would change my life arrived at after the Archduke conference on my day off work. Later, this is Elvira. My apologies for sending this when you were not on duty, but there is something we must discuss. Could you visit my estate at Fifth Bell? After repeating its message twice more, the bird disappeared. I picked up the yellow face stone, now sitting in its place, slowly blinking at the abrupt nature of the invitation, then turned to my fiancé, Lord Thurston. We had planned to spend the day together. But what about our promise, I asked. You have only one choice, do you not? It may mean at any time, but this invitation is from Lady Elvira. Please prioritize her over me. I will await good news. He began getting ready to go home, looking quite pleased. In response, I gave a vague smile and nothing else. On the surface, he was a kind fiancé who prioritized my circumstances over his own, but the good news he spoke of soured my mood. I suspect he will want Lady Elvira to arrange a meeting with Lord Bonifacius as compensation for this abrupt summons. My meeting with Lady Elvira would almost certainly be about Lady Rosamund's departure. No other reason for her invitations came to mind. Would there even be time to request a meeting with Lord Bonifacius? I already knew what Lord Thurston sought, excessive leniency for his family who were captured during the purge. I am only a man noble, I said under my breath. Asking Lord Bonifacius to bend the rules for a man who is not even my husband is much too great a burden. My sister often met with Lord Bonifacius for training, but I seldom interacted with him. I was in no position to make such a personal request, and asking for the reduction of punishment from the purge was dreadfully shameless. Even though Lord Thurston's family had only acted on Lady Veronica's orders, they had still committed their crimes. I could not help feeling they should pay the price. Yeah, they should. Consequences of your actions. If our marriage is going to be like this, I do not look forward to the future. It became all too clear that Lord Thurston, an archnoble, was only marrying into my mid-noble family so that he could connect with Lord Bonifacius to my elder sister. It was exhausting that he was putting so much pressure on me before we were even married. My apologies again for the abrupt summons, Lady Elvira said. Cornelius informed me you were not working today. She seemed eager to begin our discussion before Lady Rosamund arrived. We had an inoffensive conversation about Lady Rosamund's time at the Archduke conference while waiting for our tea to be prepared. Then the room was cleared, and Lady Elvira handed me a sound blocker as though it were the most natural thing in the world. The true reason for my being here was about to become clear. Lady Florencia is due to give birth soon, which means I will take charge of preparing for my daughter's move. I also intend to coordinate which retainers will accompany her. I could tell from the look on her dark eyes that she wanted me to stay with my lady. I was glad, but I also resented my older sister who I managed to secure a place by Lady Rosamund's side simply by wishing for it. Because she spends so little time in the castle, Rosamund has made do with fewer attendants than usual, no? Lady Elvira asked. As a result, her only attendant after the move is going to be an underage men-noble who started serving her not even half a year ago. How terribly worrying. Attendants were tasked with maintaining the lifestyle of their lord or lady. They were often closer to their charge than any other kind of retainer, which was why anyone who left their home duchy, through marriage or for any other reason, would go with their most trusted attendants. Lady Rosamund was less fortunate, though. The only attendants due to accompany her to the sovereignty was Grisha. It was unorthodox and, as Lady Elvira had said, worrying. But it cannot be helped when one considers whom Lady Rosamund keeps as her arch-attendants. Riarda had served the longest, but she was Ob Ehrenfest's attendant first and foremost. She had even returned to his service after the purge to help make up for the fresh gaps in his retinue. As far as attendance went, she was a unique case in that she served whomever the Ob said she should. Even without the purge, she would likely never have left Ehrenfest. As for Brunhilde, she had gotten engaged to the Ob during the feast celebrating spring. Moving to the sovereignty was not an option when she was due to become the duchy's second wife. She had much experience doing business with the royal family and top-ranking duchess on top of her already strong socializing skills, so Lady Rosamund truly was going to miss her. As for Audley, her husband, Lord Lebrecht, served as Lady Florencia's retainer. She would not be able to move to the sovereignty unless they divorced, or he started serving Lady Rosamund instead. The former was entirely unrealistic, and the latter was unlikely when the archducal family already had so few retainers. It seems that you do not intend to accompany my daughter, Laisletta. Has she failed you as your lady? Not in the least. I choose to serve Lady Rosamund, and my feelings have not changed. However, I closed my mouth, hesitant to reveal my family's circumstances. I did not wish to burden Lady Elvira with my concerns. Dealing with requests from Lord Thorsten and his family would surely be trouble enough. Be open with me, Laisletta. I am my house's successor, and since I cannot consult my parents, my hands are tied. I could not leave my position without discussing it with Father, but as Lady Rosamund's move remains private, I could not make such adjustments. Furthermore, I am already engaged to Lord Thorsten, one of Lord Wolfrey's retainers. Neither of our families would allow our union to be cancelled. To prioritize love? I can arrange for your Starbinding to be brought forward in the summer so that he can go with you as your husband. I imagined the future and then shook my head. Even in the sovereignty, Lord Thorsten would never mesh with Lady Rosamund's retainers. He was a noble of the Veronica faction at heart, so his presence would only burden my lady. I do not love him, I said, then sighed. It would probably be best for my house if our engagement was cancelled, but our family are men nobles. We could never make such a move against arch-nobles. Elvira placed a hand on her cheek and gave me a look of concern. I agree that Lord Thorsten, a member of the former Veronica faction, would not get along well with your house, which has loyally served Lady Florencia from the beginning. I expect he gave you an unreasonable demand to be carried out during this meeting. Yep. Yep. Lord Thorsten was already using me to get closer to Lord Bonifacius, but that was not all. Any time I sought to exchange intelligence that would close the gap between our lord and lady, he would smile and declare, "It is only natural for an adopted daughter to give away her accomplishments. Please ensure Lady Rosamund knows this." He stubbornly clung to his opinions and showed not the slightest interest in compromising with me. And that brazen request he made, ensure that Lord Bonifacius resolves my family's problems for me. The nerve! I wanted to cooperate with Lord Thorsten to support the future archducal couple, I said, but things are not going as I anticipated. Our perspectives seldom aligned, and our engagement had only served to exacerbate the divide between our charges. So if you will excuse my bluntness, would you accompany Rosamund if you could, Laisletta? Yes, but I am a men noble. I do not have the socializing experience necessary to be the retainer of a princess. Brunhilde had done business with the royal family and top-ranking duchess almost entirely on her own, and Audley has served as head attendant during the Archduke conference. There was nothing for me to do but oversee Lady Rosamund's chambers and day-to-day activities, and even these tasks would ultimately fall to Grecian next year. Were Lady Rosamund to request it, I would jump at the chance to continue serving her. But I could never act on my own desires alone. I would need an order from her or someone of sufficiently high status. Your perspective is sound. Rosamund always strives to respect the desires of others, but she must be taught when to voice her own desires as well. Did she mean to say that she would speak with Lady Rosamund for me? At the thought of my wish coming true, I started to suspect this was merely a convenient dream. Lady Elvira, why would you go to such lengths for my sake? I asked. She chuckled. I do this not for you, but for Rosamund. One cannot learn overnight how to manage her medicine or care for her when she collapses. Do you truly think I would entrust her to a single fresh-faced attendant and some sovereign nobles who never spent time with her before? It is my duty as the person overseeing my daughter's departure to ensure that you stay by her side. Rather than feeling hurt, I was overcome with relief. If she truly was acting for her daughter, I could trust that she would not change her mind at the last moment. Furthermore, she continued, you have dedicated your life to Rosamund, have you not? For her sake, you increased your mana to the point that you could not find anyone within your house to marry. For her sake, you strove to become a qualified doctor. It seems a waste to give up such a loyal retainer. I swallowed as she had said, after witnessing the true extent of my lady's poor health, I had elected to take the courses necessary to become a doctor. Unfortunately, because of my late entrance into Lady Rosamund's retinue, there hadn't been time for me to complete enough of them. To begin with, I doubted that I would actually receive the qualification. My aim was simply to build upon my medical knowledge as much as I could. This is why I did not inform anyone of my decision, not even my family or my fellow retainers. How did you find out, Lady Elvira? Cornelius always pays close attention to his peers. But it was Hartman who first noticed, it would seem. My choice of courses and the potions I brewed had given Hartman enough information to deduce my intentions. I really had tried to keep them hidden, but as it turned out, not even my best efforts were enough. Not only was I unable to become a qualified doctor, I still cannot brew the potions Lady Rosamund drinks on a daily basis, I said, looking at Lady Elvira in her dark eyes. Furthermore, as a men noble, I will not be of any use when it comes to socializing. Am I even worth the trouble? She returned my look and said, Hartman and Clarissa can take care of the brewing. And as for any socializing duties, that can be entrusted to the scholars. or to the sovereign nobles who surely specialize in such work, but you were the only one who could protect Rosemine's everyday life. Her everyday life? Indeed, that is the most important duty of an attendant. Rosemine needs someone who can provide normalcy after the adoption. Hearing that I was not only wanted, but valued so highly made a warm feeling spread through my bosom. I shall devote my life to serving Lady Rosemine, I said, reaffirming my dedication. Lady Elvira wasted not another moment. She got Lady Rosemine to reveal that she wanted me to accompany her, then swiftly arranged a meeting with my father. As soon as he received the invitation, he came with me to Lady Elvira's estate, whereupon the room was cleared and we were given sound-blocking magic tools. That was enough for my father to realize the severity of our discussion, and immediately his face stiffened. We are gathered today to discuss something very important to me, Lady Elvira said, so let us begin in earnest. Have someone replace Laisletta as your house's successor so that she can continue to serve as Rosemine's attendant. My father was taken aback. The suggestion is you would do well to keep this to yourself, but Rosemine is moving to the sovereignty at the king's request. Father inhaled sharply before Elvira dryly explained the circumstances. 1 year from now, Lady Rosemine's engagement will be cancelled, and she would move to the sovereignty. Because she would not have any archnoble attendants with her, she would need to rely entirely on a member of the former Veronica faction who had given her name in the winter. I proposed that Laisletta accompany her, she continued, but she had to refuse the idea since she is expected to succeed your house and is engaged to one of Lord Wilfred's archnoble retainers. You are the head of a family of attendants, correct? I expect you know how important they are to someone leaving their home duchy. I consider it essential that Laisletta remain by my daughter's side, and shall do everything in my power to make it happen. In no uncertain terms, she had ordered my father to let me go, while also offering to help if any issues my departure might cause. He cast his eyes down in thought, then looked up at me and said, Laisletta, do you want to go? Yes, I replied, remembering that how Lady Elvira had admonished my lady for not making her feelings clear. Lady Rosemine personally asked me to accompany her, and if our family matters can be resolved, that is what I wish to do. I see. Well, with Lady Elvira offering her assistance, we should not struggle to replace you. Go if your mind is made up. Truly? Uderic will take your place. Uderic was a man of our house to whom I had previously been engaged. Unfortunately, our union had crumbled when we attempted to mix colors and realized that my mana quantity had grown so much that we no longer matched. Attempted to mix colors? What, by holding hands? Is that what you guys did? I really hope that's what you did. Still, our house would be satisfied with him. Uderic was raised to take the lead as Laisletta's husband, so there should not be any issues with him becoming the new successor, my father said, starting to relax. To be frank, I thought Laisletta would struggle in the position, so I am grateful this opportunity has arisen. Father, I gazed down at my feet. I am sorry that my shortcomings warranted such concern. Your shortcomings, father sighed. No, quite the opposite. You have made too much progress. We are proud to have you as our daughter, but in terms of manner, the head of a house should not be so far ahead of their family. That is what I meant. The head of a house was expected to mediate weddings and consult with family members, so a mana disparity would only complicate things. Looking back, father had struggled to find me a partner after my mana reached a certain point. Of course, if Lady Rosemine's mana compression method had continued to spread, things would have been fine, my father said. We would have made the most of Angelica's and your hut bonds to Lady Rosemine and Lord Bonifacius and spent future generations turning ourselves into an archnoble house. Lady Elvira nodded. Lady Rosemine's departure brings a swift end to that plan, unfortunately. Indeed, when she goes, so too will our connection to the Archducal family. The cancellation of her engagement will now also impact Lord Wilfred, and who knows what Lord Thorsten's position might be in the future. Making Uderic the head of our house would no doubt be important. Do you also want Laisletta's engagement to be cancelled, Lady Elvira asked. My knowledge of your situation comes only from rumors, so I would appreciate an account from the head of the house. Father frowned, then nodded. They have asked us to secure favors from Lord Bonifacius, which has been troubling for some time and continues to be a grave matter of concern. Lord Thorsten's family had sought connections to the royal family through my engagement. I served Lady Rosemine, the spiritual head of the Lives Gangs, but they were mostly using me to get close to my older sister, who was Lord Bonifacius' favorite and in need of a partner. But as the Purge saw members of the former Veronica faction punished one after another, some among Lord Thorsten's family had also been targeted. They are your family too, my father had subsequently been told, even though my marriage had yet to happen. Smooth things over with Lord Bonifacius. I spent much time with the Archducal couple, while their hearts ached over Lady Veronica's words and deeds, my father noted, rubbing his brow as if attempting to ease a headache. It troubles me to no end that her faction now wants my help to escape punishment, especially when the Archducal family is working so hard to right old wrongs. Refusing them for this long could not have been easy, Lady Elvira said, impressed. The purge had taken place at the start of winter, and we were now at the end of spring, almost an entire half year of enduring the pressure. Laisletta was at the Royal Academy during the winter, and everyone was busy here in Ehrenfest, so there was very little interaction between our houses. I was able to refuse them in the run-up to the Archduke Conference by saying that the Archducal couple was lacking for retainers and overwhelmed with their preparations, so requesting a meeting with Lord Bonifacius would only serve to anger him. But now, we are finally out of excuses. This is why Lord Thorsten has grown more direct with his request, I added. Then I revealed his demand that I use Lady Elvira's abrupt summons as leverage, which made both her and my father grimace. Even if you do get married, my father said, our house is about to lose its connection to the Archducal family when you and Angelica leave with Lady Rosamond. Lord Thorsten's family will no doubt bemoan that your engagement served no purpose. The connections they had obtained at the cost of reducing Lord Thorsten to a men noble would deteriorate, which would no doubt displease his family. Still, our men noble house had no choice but to endure. Our fate was clear as day. Understood, Lady Elvira said. In that case, I will make sure they cancel the engagement. In return, they let it become Rosamond's head attendant. Her head attendant? But I am only a men noble. You have enough mana. Simply choose an archnoble to marry, and your status will increase. Many sovereign nobles will seek to connect with a retainer in your position, and you are going to be closer to Rosamond than anybody else. My focus had thus far been on marrying someone who would support my house alongside me, but now I could use marriage to become an archnoble instead. A men noble from our house becoming the head attendant of an archducal family member, father said, so shocked that he actually looked disturbed. Lady Elvira merely shot him a glance before she continued. Ladysletta, I do not mind if you need time to become acclimated to the kind of socializing expected of you, but please work hard to learn as much as you can from Brunhilde and Ottilie. You will accompany Rosamond as her adult attendant next term. Receive as much guidance as you can before then. Understood, I replied. Lady Elvira, I am in your care. In conclusion, Lady Elvira supports the cancellation of our engagement, and a man of my house will replace me as my successor. I am going to accompany Lady Rosamond. In our workroom at the castle, my announcement received a variety of reactions from my fellow retainers. Some stared at me in shock, while those who had been at Lord Karstedt's estate gave knowing nods. Glad to hear everything worked out, Cornelius said, then a teasing smile crept over his lips. Rosamond's sure to be over the moon, especially after she made that adorable appeal for you to go with her. Lady Rosamond truly was adorable when she made that request, Lenore agreed, giggling at the memory. I thought back to how Rosamond had worked up the courage to ask me despite her obvious embarrassment. I agree from the bottom of my heart, Lenore. Lady Rosamond was so adorable. I shall devote my life to serving her. Harmon and Clarissa both recoiled, their expressions seeming to shout, Lady Rosamond asked you to accompany her? She did, in fact. So did Lady Elvira. Cornelius Hartman said, grabbing his companion by the shoulders. I wasn't invited to this discussion. I also wasn't told anything about Lady Elvira vouching for Ladysletta. It was a discussion about Angelica's and Ladyslatta's future, Cornelius replied, brushing his Hartman's hands away. I don't see why I should report anything about their circumstances or my mother's actions to you. And do you really need to ask why we didn't invite you? You've already agreed to accompany Rosamond. Playing their feud no mind, I turned to Ottilie and said, please instruct me so that I can become Lady Rosamond's head attendant. Certainly. To be honest, I am relieved to hear that you plan to accompany her. Ottilie was running me through an outline of my socializing focused education when someone grabbed my arm out of nowhere and refused to let go. No, you're so mean, Ladysletta. You bully, you traitor. You said you would stay behind with me. Am I going to be left out again? I turned to see Judith, her violet eyes brimming with tears. It had completely slipped my mind, but she was right. I was going back on the promise we had made together. Oh dear, how am I going to console her this time? I don't know. Okay. Hold on, let me, check. Okay. Inquiry into the commotion. Ob Ehrenfest, we are in Ahrensbach, Karsa said, looking down at me. Please behave in a manner more appropriate for an archduke. It's too hot here, I complained, sprawled out on top of the sofa. At least let me relax in my own room. Karsa wanted me to speak more like an archduke. I could tell as much from the polite tone he'd affected, but I had silently refused. The commotion during the late Ahrensbach's funeral meant I was being confined to my room. I was in another duchy, and the funeral was over, yet I couldn't even explore. I grumbled and pointed at a nearby chair, urging Karstedt to sit. He sighed and shook his head, exasperated, and turned to my other retainers. The knights gave wry smiles and said, we shall guard the Ob in your place, before standing behind the Ob, leaving him with no choice but to comply. Or sitting behind the sofa, leaving him with no choice but to comply. You can't be that uncomfortable, Karstedt replied, speaking more casually now that I'd drawn him into a conversation. Then he pointed at his neck. You have the magic circle Ferdinand gave you, right? The summers in Ahrensbach were unbearably hot compared to those in Ehrenfest, as Ferdinand had given us a magic circle to embroider on our underclothes before the funeral. It was so exceedingly simple that one could replicate it without issue, and even a lay noble could charge it. I was an idiot for assuming he was becoming a more considerate person, I groaned. The circle must have been a cruel prank of some kind. I spent the entire funeral trying to regulate how much mana flowed into it. The magic circle was in fact too simple. Letting my concentration slip for even a moment caused me to become so cold that I thought I might freeze. I assumed that was deliberate so you wouldn't fall asleep during the funeral. At the very least, it saved me the usual trouble of needing to mess around with a sound blocker. It was true that during funerals and other painfully slow events, I sometimes got Karstedt to use a sound blocker so that I could take a nap or start up a conversation when I got bored. Of course, that hadn't been an option this time. Had I carelessly fallen asleep and lost control of my mana, I might have become the first person in Ahrensbach history to freeze to death during the height of summer. Besides, Karstedt continued, aren't you glad you were awake? You actually have something to report during this inquiry. I can't say it's anything worth reporting. I tried to see what happened, but you got in the way. It really had been abrupt. Partway through the funeral, several of the black capes near the front had stood up and started running. Not that they'd actually made it anywhere, their fellows had pinned them down in an instant. I tried to stand up to get a better look, but Karstedt had pushed me back into my seat and muttered, "An Ob should not gawk as though this was a stage play." The ceremony had then continued as nothing had even happened, so to be honest, I was pretty much clueless. So what was the commotion about, I asked. You must have seen. You've asked 1,000 times and my answer won't change. I'm not too sure either. I saw some knights stand up and charge, but they were caught immediately. Seems to me that the Sovereign Knight's order had it all under control. Karstedt and the other knights guarding ops had spent the rest of the funeral with their staffs in hand, but nothing else of note ended up happening. I'm not going to have anything to tell them when they arrive. They'll probably spend most of the time explaining things to me. And even then, who knew whether they would tell me the whole truth? If something shady was happening behind the scenes, they'd explain it away with one convenient excuse or another. The unbearable weight sure doesn't help. I've got one word to describe this. Boring. After 3 days, even the ocean view from my window had grown tiresome. The water moved even when there wasn't any wind, which was fun to watch, but knowing that I couldn't get any closer had made me lose interest. There was so little to do that I had even finished the paperwork brought from Ehrenfest. We just received the signal, said the guard standing by the door. My time had finally come. I stood up right away while my attendants hurried to neaten my hair and smooth out my clothes. Karstedt stood as well and started directing those who would and would not be accompanying us. Ahrensbach wishes to enter. I got my retainers to clear away the fruit and plates sitting on the table and said, let them in. It wasn't long before I was face to face with the messenger whom I greeted as a model Ob. Perfect. Ehrenfest, our sincerest apologies, but we must ask you to cooperate with our inquiry. At once, I replied with a gravely serious expression. There was an incident during an Ob's funeral. An inquiry is only natural. So with my knights in tow, I went off with the messenger. We have but a few questions. The messenger had taken us to a fairly large meeting room in which Prince Sigiswald and his retainers were waiting. That there was a representative of the royal family here came as no surprise to me. To the right of him was Ferdinand, Eckert, and Justice, as well as some Ahrensbach scholars. If my eyes weren't deceiving me, Ferdinand was looking more refreshed than when I'd seen him in the morning. Let me guess, he slept during the funeral. Justice had predicted that Ferdinand would spend all night in his new hidden room, the result of a royal decree, playing with his brewing instruments, and ingredients Rosamund had asked me to deliver. His earlier pallor had doubtless been the consequence of an all-nighter. Feeling exasperated, I turned my attention to those sitting on the other prince's other side. For some reason, Georgine was there alongside her retainers. Wait, isn't that where Lady Detlinda should be as the next Ob? She had attended the Archduke conference as an adult, whereas her absence was very noticeable. Excluding her from a public meeting in the royal family's presence was as good as Ahrensbach declaring it did not view her as the next Ob. I can understand not wanting her to be here, considering how much she's blundered, but this is just such a public declaration that they didn't trust the next Ob would put Ferdinand, her fiancé, in a much weaker position. It was bad enough that his wedding had needed to be postponed, so this new development made me want to grit my teeth. I'm guessing my sister is to blame. Yep, most likely. There was nothing stopping her from sternly disciplining her daughter, but it seemed to me that she was choosing not to. In fact, had she predicted and even started using Lady Detlinda's foolishness to her advantage? Behind the thin veil covering her face, her red lips were curled into a smile. Ob Ehrenfest, Prince Sigiswald said, we must ask that you tell us what you know of the incident. My guards told me that several of the Sovereign Knights grew violent before being taken down by their peers. But from my seat, I only saw the Sovereign Knights near the front stand up. Prince Sigiswald exchanged a look with the Sovereign Knight Commander. Is that truly everything, he asked me? You have nothing more to say? The knights who turned violent were all from Ehrenfest, the commander added. Would you care to comment on that? What? My brow furrowed as I muttered, so some of the emigrants went to the Sovereign Knights Order? Our Duchy's Best had disliked my mother's methods and moved to the sovereignty to escape her. That much was old news. But because none of them have returned or even contacted us since, we had no idea how many were living there. We were just as clueless as to whether they were knights, attendants, or scholars. Excuse me, the commander asked. My apologies. Since I was decreed but the only Ehrenfest citizens who have moved to the sovereignty might have been scholars. I did not realize there were Ehrenfest knights among the Sovereign Knights Order. They had presumably immigrated prior to my becoming Ob. Mother had told me once that the knights who had refused to serve me when my older sister was denied the archducal seat had moved to the sovereignty. She had said that our duchy had no need for those who wouldn't devote themselves to me. But now, after what I'd experienced during the purge, I saw things differently. I couldn't help thinking that the knights, the ones who had grown violent during the funeral, had given their names to my sister. There must have been more going on with those knights than we currently knew. Maybe I was being overly suspicious, but there were more noble names sworn to my sister than we'd expected. It wouldn't have been at all strange for something like this to happen without my knowing. I turned to my sister. Though her veil stopped me from being able to make out her expression, I was certain she was plotting something. "Oh my, you are an Ob, yet you do not know which of your nobles moved away," Georgina asked. "How inconvenient for them. Have you not been staying in contact with the sovereignty?" I raised an eyebrow. Her tone made it sound as though she were chastising me out of consideration as my older sister. But we had never been close. The winter purge had made me realize that more keenly than ever. "Ehrenfest has not encountered any issues as a result," I replied, disregarding her warning. My hands were already full of my new child, renovating Groschel, and preparing for Rosamund's departure. Looking into the sovereign nobles due to return in the winter could wait. All of a sudden, I got the feeling that someone was staring at me. I glanced across those gathered and saw Ferdinand, a stern look in his eyes that seemed to shout, "You are failing to keep up appearances," or maybe that explanation was not good enough. "As the royal family is aware," I stressed, "our nobles in the sovereignty do not return each winter, so we have not had any contact with them. This hadn't been a problem for us, but as I remember, the sovereignty had desperately wanted more information about Rosamund and Ehrenfest as a whole. Since becoming the Archduke, I have sent only scholars who received Hirscher's recommendation to the sovereignty. That we sent knights in the past is news to me. One had to be exceptionally talented knight to move to the sovereignty. Chances were that they had all trained under Bonifacius back when he was the knight commander. I made sure to emphasize that I wasn't at all associated with them, no way was I going to take the heat for knights I'd neither met nor knew about." "Ob Ehrenfest, what do you think about people from your duchy causing such a serious incident?" Prince Sigiswald asked. "As an Ob, I do not have anything to say. Ehrenfest is unrelated to this matter." I wasn't going to spare a single thought for these unknown knights who weren't even my citizens. "But they were from your duchy. Can you really claim to have no connection to them whatsoever?" The prince wore a smile that told me he intended to drag Ehrenfest into this mess. He was silently urging me to accept the blame, but I pretended not to notice. It was better to be considered a dense or a fool than be wrongly be held accountable. I would expect my elder sister to know more about these knights than I. They left my duchy so long ago that I do not even remember them, so they must have been from her generation or older. I saw her smile, resolved not to let her feign ignorance. It seemed very likely that the knights had given their names to her. "Did you meet them before you wed out of Ehrenfest, or perhaps you met them in the sovereignty while carrying out your duties as the first wife of a greater duchy?" "Oh my, how bold to voice such unfounded accusations," she replied. "In the first place, how many years has it been since I left Ehrenfest? You have a penchant for maintaining relationships with nobles of other duchies. It would not be strange at all for you to have kept in contact with them in some way. I can only envy your popularity." Rather than backing down, I pushed even further, this time hinting at the winter purge. Even now, years after her move to Ahrensbach, she had a great deal of power over Ehrenfest, more than I would have been able to secure in her position. I was genuinely impressed by her skill and the depth of her tenacity. "Oh, she continues to hold that much influence?" Prince Sigiswald asked. "It has far more to do with politics than my so-called popularity. Sovereign nobles would obviously rather be connected to the greater duchy Ahrensbach than in Ehrenfest," Georgine replied, not even attempting to deny her association with the knights. "Or at least that used to be the case. Lady Rosamund has brought her duchy to a higher rank, and it now enjoys the royal family's good graces. Meanwhile, Ahrensbach has lost its Ob and does not have anyone to replace him. Prince Sigiswald, so as the next Zent, it is not clear to you which duchy the sovereign nobles will prefer." "Indeed, much has changed in recent years," he replied with a nod. "Nobody could have predicted that Ehrenfest would become this valued. Had it not been a surefire way to get me executed on the spot, I would have grabbed Prince Sigiswald and shouted at the top of my lungs, 'Prince Anastasius told you to be wary of Ahrensbach, didn't he? We warned you!' I mean, we made it pretty damn clear that Trug might be coming from Ahrensbach, right?" Of course, my only option was to remain silent. Even with Matthias's testimony and a scholarly assessment, we had no concrete evidence that Trug was being used. The royal family was apparently looking into the matter, but I didn't know whether they had made any discoveries. Picking a fight with Georgine and Ahrensbach was anything but a smart move, and would surely cast suspicion on Ehrenfest more than anyone else. Prince Sigiswald might be playing dumb to keep Ahrensbach from figuring out the royal family is onto them. Yeah, that must be it. I'm hoping that's it. They wouldn't have glossed over our very clear warning. I repeated that in my head a few times and started treating the sovereignty with caution as well. "We ask that the sovereign nobles from Ehrenfest be ordered to return home," I said. "Given what has happened, however, it might be best to refuse their entry. It seemed to be at risk of causing another incident." "Ob Ehrenfest, do you mean to refuse a royal decree?" Prince Sigiswald asked. "The order for their return was given to the sovereign nobles, not to me. The onus is entirely on the sovereignty. It was my roundabout way of saying that they really wanted to send the nobles back to Ehrenfest as planned. They would need to take responsibility for them." Next, I turned to the Sovereign Knight Commander. As I understand it, this is not the first time Sovereign Knights have turned violent. There was also an instance during the winter, and those knights were not from Ehrenfest. It is clear then that the Sovereign Knight's Order is at fault, not my duchy. Should we not question its leadership to prevent this from happening a third time? You are correct. After the first incident, we relieved the knights of duty and returned each one to their home duchy, but that was evidently too light a punishment. This time the culprits have been executed. Wow. Already? Ferdinand asked. He had been silently transcribing the inquiry since my arrival, but now there was a deep furrow across his brow, even though their testimony would have been the utmost importance. Questioning them would have been a pointless endeavor. Last time the knights merely repeated themselves as if oblivious to whatever we said. Besides, this incident was far more severe. They attacked during the funeral of an Ob, while representatives of the royal family were in attendance. That is precisely why this should have been questioned, so that we could ascertain the cause and prevent another of these disasters. I agree. I crossed my arms. Sparks were flying between Ferdinand and the Knight Commander. Ferdinand in particular came across as unusually harsh, considering both his expression and the remarks he was making. It seemed to me that these two knew each other from somewhere. I would have liked to do that, of course, the commander said, but the next Ob Ahrensbach ordered us to promptly execute any knight who would attack the archducal family. All eyes fell on him. Lady Detlinde had apparently declared that she would not tolerate the survival of anyone who would threaten her life. Nobody could protest her decision. Archducal families were crucial to the running of the country's duchy, so attacking one was a serious crime. Still, executing one's prisoners without even questioning them wasn't normal at all. In truth, the commander continued, I started to suspect that you, her future husband, told her to give the order. Perhaps to keep the truth of the incident from ever being discovered? That would be devious indeed, Prince Sigiswald asked. And now they are both scrutinizing Ferdinand, the third person from Ehrenfest to have been suspected so far, alongside my sister and me. The whole situation made me want to grimace. I was genuinely suspicious of Georgine, but from an outsider perspective, she was still associated with our duchy. Continuing to push is way too dangerous. We were in a bad situation. But as I tried to find a way out, one of the Ahrensbach scholars raised a hand and sought permission to speak. Lord Ferdinand would never do such a thing. Rather, Lady Detlinde is the one who thinks and acts carelessly. That is precisely why we opted to exclude her from this inquiry. Thank you! Thank you! Somebody in Ahrensbach standing up for Ferdinand. Thank you. Somebody, thank you. Prince Sigiswald nodded and said, I see. It was a half-hearted response at best, and appeared to do nothing to stop him from suspecting Ferdinand. I could no longer suppress my irritation. Ferdinand, Rosamund and my entire duchy have bent over backwards to answer the needs of the royal family. Would you still question our loyalty and view us with suspicion? I gave him the coldest look I could muster, and it must have been effective, for his eyes widened in response. I am simply listening to the testimony that is provided, he said. Ehrenfest is under no more scrutiny than any other duchy. That is a relief. If our loyalty were questioned, we would need to respond. Perhaps that meant we would double down on supporting them, or perhaps we could run out of patience and start keeping our distance. I wasn't going to be any more specific. Either outcome would affect Ehrenfest's relationship with the royal family. I'd personally like to refuse the sovereign nobles due to return to Ehrenfest, but that might not even be an option. My brow furrowed as I tried to determine the best means of defense. The other duchies were unlikely to be up in arms about the incident. From afar, it hadn't even been clear what had happened. The offending knights have received a swift execution, and even every single one of them had been from Ehrenfest, though they most likely been closer to my sister than me. Struck by a sobering realization, I shifted my attention to Georgine. Could it be that this incident was an attempt to prevent me from meeting the sovereign knights? It was hard to tell when she was wearing her veil, but I could sense that we were looking into each other in the eye. What do you mean? Prince Sigiswald asked. I continued, my eyes still glued to my sister. Just this winter, the sovereign knights from Ehrenfest were ordered to return home. I simply wonder if someone wished to stop that from happening. Do you have any evidence for this assertion? Not exactly. It's just a gut feeling. The mood lightened as though I had just cracked a joke, but I didn't care. Something inside of me screamed that I was right. Ferdinand gave me a look that practically said, stop messing around, but I knew that he would gather evidence to support my hunch. Yep, it's just a gut feeling. But I trusted my instincts, and anyone who really knew me understood why. They had never failed me when it mattered most. Sometimes it even felt as though someone up above were pointing me toward the right path. Our back and forth continued until the prince was finally satisfied. Thus concludes our discussion with Ehrenfest, he declared. As I stood to leave, I noticed there was still a broad smile spread across Georgine's face. Won't be long before we finally settle things. That, too, was just a gut feeling, but I could tell that time was approaching fast. Whoa, the afterword! Let's see. Yeah, Ferdinand's not normal. Yeah, extremely abnormal. Da, 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 da. What? It's adorable. Oh boy. Okay, I'll get to work on everything and I'll see you guys in the next one.